Hello and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Ledgeview Partners. Thank you all for giving us your time today to learn about today's topic, your sales coaching keys to success. My name is Julia Flaherty and I am the marketing coordinator at Ledgeview Partners. We are a business and technology firm that collaborates with organizations across industries to transform sales, marketing, and customer service operations and processes that are supported by core technologies like customer relationship management and marketing automation. Before I introduce today's presenter, I just have a few quick housekeeping items to cover. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand after the live session. All attendees will receive a follow-up email after the webinar is complete with a link to access the presentation. We encourage you to share it among your colleagues and in your professional networks. To ensure best audio quality during today's presentation, as always, we have everyone on listen-only mode. However, if you do have a question or comment, please submit those via the question pane you will find on your GoToWebinar control panel. And now that those items are out of the way, it's time to focus on today's sales topic, your sales coaching keys to success. In this webinar, Ledgeview will walk you through the types of sales coaching, defining a coaching program, and much, much more. When it comes to sales organization leadership, there's perhaps no one better to present than Greg Dove at Ledgeview Partners, who is our Director of Business Consulting. Greg has a lot of experience in different industries leading sales organizations to success, and it is my pleasure to welcome him today and let him take over and start this presentation.
Thanks, Julia, and thank you everyone for attending. So today's topic, as Julia mentioned, is sales coaching. And when I created the content for today's webinar, it does certainly include learnings and key findings throughout my 20 years working with sales organizations. And I will say that looking way back, sales coaching was something that was maybe part of larger, more sophisticated sales organizations. But moving forward to the last 5 or 6 years, it really is an emerging trend with some of the most successful organizations that I work with. So the point being, if you're not currently doing sales coaching, or if you have a sales coaching program, we hope to be able to give you some tricks and some key learnings that will help your organization, because it's certainly something that everyone should be doing. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about the different types of coaching. We'll touch on the different types of coaching programs and kind of show you some bare minimum coaching programs and kind of a good, better, best. We'll talk about what's necessary to create a program, what some of those key components are, and then finally, once you've really decided to embrace coaching, how do you go about picking a coach and how do you know who's right for that role? So with that, we'll jump right into it. So 2 types of sales coaching that I really recognize and really encompass a lot of what we'll talk about today are internal focused coaching and external focused coaching. So first we'll talk about internal. Now this is really about you as a sales organization and what you want to accomplish on a year-to-year basis. So if we look at it, we all, as good sales leaders, want to coach and strive to have growth at the end of the year, and that's really the finish line, if you will. So when we look at metric and goal-based coaching, the year-end goal typically is around year-to-date sales versus prior year-to-date sales, or year-to-date margin versus prior year-to-date margin. And then very typically it also has some type of volume measurements like units or pieces sold. So when we look at that, again, that's kind of the finish line where you want to be. So we want to get there. And another great thing to do as part of your sales coaching is to look at the now, the current month, the current week, and some of those key performance indicators that I recommend you focus on are sales activities per week. And when we talk about sales activities per week, we're not just talking about phone calls or visits to customers, but what else should we measure? And a lot of times that's quotes, opportunities, and as we see more and more emails. So look at what your sales activities are and coach to the number you want per week and even per month. Another key performance indicator that I see a lot is new accounts opened, and new points of distribution. And one of the quickest ways to grow your sales year over year is to add new accounts and to have a broader scope of your products and distribution. So those are really key things to look at. And if we're looking at those today and coaching to those and looking at them next week and next month, that's going to give us an opportunity to coach to success. So if we wait 9 months or wait till the end of the year, it may be too late to affect our sales results. But if we can look at them at different intervals and understand those performance indicators, it will really help us. And then any successful sales organization, well, whether you're selling products or services, you typically have some type of pipeline. So I recommend that when you do this type of coaching session, you look at pending opportunities and offer advice on how to move that needle forward. And then it's also really important to look at closed opportunities and understand why you won that opportunity or why you lost that opportunity, and then use that information to sell more. So understand why we're winning, and when we lose, understand what competitor it's to, and possibly what other factors influence the loss of that sale, and then adjusting. So that's a good way to start an internal focused coaching program. When we look at the other type of sales coaching, I like to call it customer interaction coaching or external. And this is really going to be based on your sales reps and how they interact with their customers. So it's going to be based on sales calls, but it may also include other items, as you'll see later, like chat or email. And we should really take a look at those activities and interactions with the customers to make sure that we're adhering to our sales process. We spend a lot of time creating a sales process and a lot of money, so let's make sure we're following it, and this is a great way to do it. And when you do this internal coaching, you'll also have an opportunity to identify strengths and growth opportunities for your reps. So we're going to take the strengths and recognize them and encourage them to continue to use them, but then there's probably going to be some growth or learning opportunities, and we want them to take those and try to improve on them. Another important aspect of the internal coaching is to make it a continuing process. So it's a continuation from one session to the other. And what I mean by that is when you are done with a coaching session, you should lay out next steps to work on. So when you coach them in the next session, you can gauge how they did in working on the items you've identified. So make sure it's a never-ending process going from one session to another to measure growth. Frequency is really going to be based on your individual performance. When you start a program or change a program, you're probably going to be coaching everyone with the same frequency, but as they grow and understand and become comfortable with the process, you may be able to pull the reins back a little bit and do it on just a monthly basis. But in the beginning, I would recommend doing it at least twice per month. And as any coaching or any feedback, it should be very clear and have measurements so you can determine how you should proceed. So I recommend that you have an acceptable coaching session or a not acceptable, and I'll show you a little bit more about what that means coming up. So when we look at types of coaching programs, and this, as I went out and did a little research and through my experience, this kind of made me chuckle a little bit. The different types of coaching programs range from random to informal to formal coaching to dynamic coaching, and they're actually starting with random, moving down to dynamic. They're in the order of least desirable states, I would say, to where you really want to be. And random coaching, as it probably implies, is really not a very well organized program at all. So it's really left to the managers. And my experience would say, well, it's a good intention and they mean to coach. A lot of times it really doesn't happen because no one is really enforcing it. So a random coaching program is really left to the manager or coach's discretion, and it probably doesn't happen very often. Informal coaching, we have a process and it's in place, but it's not well defined, and there's really no system of checks and measures. So it's hard to measure adherence, and it's hard to really look and see if it's doing a good job because there's no compliance, and as all things happen, if we don't show the importance of it, it's not going to happen. So it's really, it may be a step up from random coaching, but not by much. Then when we get into formal coaching, this is where a lot of you may be today. And if you are in the random or informal, this is probably the next step you want to take. So you really want to define your coaching program and implement it. And then your coaches are actually trained and held accountable to the program. And I would say you're also going to coach the reps so they understand the program. So formalized coaching is a really good place to be at. And what we want to do is hopefully be evolving to the dynamic coaching phase. And once we're in the dynamic coaching phase, we are really aligned with the customer and their buying process. So you hear a lot about the customer journey and the buying process. What this is doing is really taking your coaching to a new level and helping them through that process, because that buyer experience has really changed a lot, and they're entering the sales cycle at a lot later stage. So you want to understand that and try to get in there as soon as you can, and then align with that customer and how they're proceeding through their purchasing journey. So those are the different types of coaching programs. So just a couple of stats that stuck out to me. In 2017, 34% of sales organizations employed a random approach to coaching. And as I go back one slide, you'll see random coaching is not where we want to be. So we have about 34% of organizations that are there, and really, if you're one of them, you'll want to take a hard look and see what you can do to get to the other phases, because the random is really not where we want to be. And this should come as no surprise, but coaching really does have a direct effect on your sales metrics and your sales success. So some of the things that really stood out to me is your close rate with a good coaching program can increase by 17%. A good coaching program will help your expired deals decrease by 63%. So what that means, if you're counting on a deal and that's set to close in July, you can actually make sure that happens in July versus letting it move to August. So we're decreasing that likelihood of that deal expiring. Close date changes. If you ever manage a pipeline and you're trying to forecast, this can drive you crazy, because what was once forecasted to close in April is now pushed out to June, and before you know it, it may end up in October. So by really having a good coaching program, you can decrease the change date of those opportunities. And then this last one is really kind of a funny one, but it really shows the importance. Days since last customer interaction or touch by sales decreased 73% with a good coaching program. So what that means is, through proper coaching, we are actually engaging with our customers more and probably doing a heck of a lot to really improve your customer satisfaction and your overall customer experience. So coaching is definitely worth it, as these statistics show. So once we've decided to create a coaching program, it's really important to evaluate what you do and how you do it. And the first thing you should do is take a look and see where you are as a sales organization and be honest about it. Understand what your strengths are and understand what your weaknesses are, and then begin to build it. And it's important in gathering all this information that you include all the key stakeholders. So go ahead and actually talk to your sales reps and see what they could use to become more effective. Go ahead and talk to the vice president of sales or some of the upper level management and see what their goals are and what they would like to see, and take that into consideration. But just as important, take some of your top customers and talk to them and see what you could do to make their experience better, see what you can improve on, and see what you do well, and put that feedback into your coaching program. And what you really want to do is have a program where it's clear to identify strengths and improvement areas. And as you do that, keep that customer journey in mind, but also understand what your ideal goals are and what that finish line looks like and use that to help in creating this program. A couple other really good things to do when you're creating the program is to make it simple and flexible. There's oftentimes seasonality to the products or services you're selling, and there can be different sales cycles, different channels, different segmentations. So take all of those into account, and by making it simple and flexible, you can really address all of those factors. A good practice in creating a sales process, but also in creating a coaching program, is to have tools that will aid in that process. So I recommend having coaching forms, call checklists, and product cheat sheets. And product cheat sheets are really, what products do you have? And when I think of this, I think of the drive-through experience. You order a hamburger, and they're automatically asking you if you want a soda or fries. So if you have a product and it complements other products, make sure that your reps understand that and coach them to that, and use cheat sheets to aid in that process. You need to make sure that with any coaching program, you do the proper training for not only your managers and your coaches, but also your sales team. So once you've invested all this time, invest a little bit more and make sure everyone understands how the program works and what they can do to be successful in it. A real easy way that I employ it here, and I've had many clients integrated into their coaching program, is to reward success. And it doesn't have to be a huge reward, but if you can create incentive for maybe the sales call of the month, or the coaching session of the month, or maybe the leader, and whatever some of your key performance indicators are, and make it simple. Give them a gift card to Starbucks, or recognize them on your board in the break room, whatever it is, but do things to call out success, and that'll help you gain the buy-in. And then with any sales cycle, with any sales process, there's always going to be change that happens. Don't be afraid of that, and take that opportunity to change your coaching program to mention it. So as your sales cycle, as your sales organization evolves, make sure your program goes hand in hand with it. As far as creating a program and implementing it, one of the most important things is to understand your organization. And if you have a certain period of the year where you're very busy, or if you know you have a new product launch coming up, or you're really pushing to hit a year-end number, don't implement your program at that time. Take the time and implement it at the time that works best for your organization, because I think a lot of programs fail because they're done at the wrong time, and they don't have the proper attention that they need. So make sure you're doing it at the right time. And as I said before, if you can reward success, go ahead and share results with your team. It helps create a competitive environment. So some of the key components of a good coaching program are, you have defined frequency. And earlier I said it's okay to change, and I think that applies to frequency too. So if you have reps that are in different stages of their career, you're probably going to coach them differently, and you're probably going to have different coaching frequency, and that's okay. Just make sure you're accounting for that and build it into the program, because if someone's new to the organization, they're obviously going to be at a different point, so you'll want to coach them differently. As we mentioned, the sales process should be supported by the coaching program, and it will really help make sure that you're following that process. And if it's a good process, we know that's going to help lead us to success. KPIs, we talked about those. Make sure you're measuring them. So you want to make sure it's supporting the sales process, and KPIs are probably identified in that process, so make sure we're looking at them. When we formalize our coaching program, and to make sure that we have good adaption and buy-in, make it a pass-fail. So we don't want it to be a punitive experience for your sales reps, but we do want to make it real. So if they're doing good, it's a pass. If they have areas for development, it's a fail. And I'll show you an example of that in just a second, but make it make it a real clear cut between what's acceptable and what's not. And you can also use this to really help gauge the performance of your team and get a clear shot at where you're going and what your developmental areas are. So here is just an example of a coaching form. And what I would say is at the very top, you have areas of feedback, and then you have a quality rating. So the areas of feedback are probably going to be different for each organization depending on your sales process, because what we're really looking to do is to see how we're adhering to those various steps in the sales process, and then we're giving them a rating of a excellent, good, poor, needing action, however you want to word it, but see how they're accounting for that sales process. And then as you move down, starting with notes from the call, these can probably be standardized just about through any sales organization. So you're going to have some notes from the call. There should be some clear strengths from the call that you want to recognize and encourage them to continue to use them. And then there's going to be those areas needing development. So we want to call those out. And again, it's not meant to be punitive. It's just meant to say, here's some things you could do better to help you achieve more success. And then based on all of your feedback, you'll have an overall satisfaction measurement on that call, and you should share that and make sure that they understand it. And then right towards the bottom here, I have goals and objectives for next evaluation period. That's how you make the sales coaching process continue from one session to another. So give them some feedback on what they can do and what you'd like to see them grow on between now and the next session, and then start that session off with those goals and objectives from the last period so you can see if they're actually taking your feedback and implementing that into their interactions. And then at the very bottom, you see that I have a place for signatures. So this is really formalizing it and making it an important part of their evaluation, and it makes them accountable. So you're going to go ahead and sign and date, and then this should ideally go into their employee personnel file. So if we look at the coaching form, in one way, that's kind of the test. So a nice tool to also give your sales rep are the answers to the test, which I call a pre-call or even during the call checklist. So it's going to have those different steps of the sales process, and they can write on this, they can use an electronic copy, but it should really guide them through every area of their interaction that you want them to pay attention to. And if you're doing it, you're going to accomplish a couple of things. They should follow your sales process, which will hopefully lead to increasing sales, but you're also going to have increased customer satisfaction because now your sales reps are much more effective in how they're going about their interactions. And again, you can use this, as a printout, an electronic copy, but I would say most good sales reps, after a month of following this, they have this kind of in their memory, and it's kind of on autopilot for them after that. So if you have a coaching program and you have the coaching form, make sure you have a pre-call checklist for them. Your program for coaching should make sure we're looking at all of your channels, because as you all know, our channels are evolving. So it's not just a sales call, it's not just an in-person visit. It now also is chats and emails. So make sure that your program accounts for that. And you might not have as an exhaustive checklist or coaching form for a chat, but make sure that if you have certain things that you want to accomplish in a chat or an email, that you're coaching to that to make sure they're accomplishing it. As we talked before, and we talked about signing the form, make sure your managers and your sales reps are accountable and engaged in that program. It should be an ongoing process, and there should really be a lot of back and forth around these coaching sessions. So they really need to be accountable, engaged, and show the right buy-in. We talked about bridging the coaching sessions, so that's something you should definitely do. And obviously, the emphasis is on making it a very formal part of their job, and you can use it in the employee appraisal process. Most places do it on an annual basis. Particularly, I take the results from our coaching program and put that in all my reviews and let them know where they're at and what they can do to improve. So now that we've gone through a pretty exhaustive process of understanding our business, understanding our sales process, and creating programs around it, you have to invest a little more time and make sure you have the right person to do the coaching. In smaller organizations, this could be the sales manager. And in some larger organizations, you may see the sales manager coaching on the internal coaching, and you may see a quality coach doing the external coaching. But regardless of what you're going to do, have a good coach, and here's some real things to consider when you do it. Make sure the person that you have is someone who's more of a senior person, because they're going to have a better pulse on your products. They're going to understand your processes, and odds are, if they've been there a while and you're looking at them for a coaching opportunity, they're probably a top performer, and this is a really good way to go ahead and gauge them to see if they might be a potential leader for your company. So those are a couple of real important things. You'll also want them to have some pretty basic knowledge of strong verbal communication. They obviously need to have the respect of the team. They should be able to offer feedback and be able to adopt their approach to coaching from individual to individual, because one size does not fit all. So take some time and look to see who you have, and maybe you have 3 or 4 people that would be good coaches, and maybe even go through a process and interview and then pick the right one. But the key point here and the main takeaway is make sure that you're spending time to pick the right coach and a good coach for you, because they're really your face of the program to your reps. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Julia, but I'd also like to say thank you very much for attending the webinar today.
Great. Thank you so much for that excellent presentation, Greg. I'm sure our attendees will go back to their days with these key takeaways and start to act on them. If you're interested in learning more about developing an effective sales organization or an inside sales program, check out our library of resources. We just published a new ebook called 21 Tips to Building a Successful Inside Sales Program, and we also have several infographics on the subject, plus blog posts, tip sheets, other on-demand webinars, events, and press releases, all about CRM, customer service, sales, marketing, and other happenings at Ledgeview that your entire organization will benefit from. At Ledgeview, we are the experts, so you don't have to be, guiding you every step of the way. This August, we'll have some more webinars coming up with a different focus, so stay tuned for those updates. And finally, as a reminder, we will be sending you a follow-up email today with the link to today's on-demand presentation. So watch your inboxes. And that's all for today. Until next time, we'll make it a great day.